Yes, the time has finally come for me to talk about one of my favorite video games of all time. Because it is in fact featured in the new intro I made for my reviews, so I figured, alright, might as well finally talk about it. However, this review is going to come with a warning. It's not a spoiler warning, but rather this is one of the very few times I will say, if you've never played this game and you don't know much about it, if you truly trust my judgment, the less you know about this game, the better going into it. Yeah, if you take my word for it, if you go into this game completely blind, that is the best way to experience it for the first time. Just believe me on this. So if you really trust me, then stop this video right now and go play this game. All right, that being said, I do still gotta make a whole video about it, so let's do this. If you're still watching, I guess that just means you don't trust me, which, all right, fair enough. Or you've already played this game and you just want to hear me talk about it, which is cool too. BioShock Infinite. So BioShock Infinite is a first-person shooter from 2K Studios released in 2013, and it's actually the third game in a series. There's the original BioShock and BioShock 2. It's weird about those games though, because I've played the original BioShock, but I've never actually beaten it. It's weird. Every time I try playing it, I always feel like I'm gonna finish it. Like, yeah, this will be the time, but I always end up falling off either a third or even halfway through the game due to lack of interest. I know it's weird because, like, for a lot of people, you can't have one without the other. It's like Has-Been Hotel and Hell of a Boss. I love Has-Been Hotel. I don't really care for Hell of a Boss. But a lot of fans are like, you gotta love it all. I don't know, this is just how I am. I've never beaten the original BioShock and I've never touched BioShock 2. But this game, BioShock Infinite, I have played and beaten many times. I first got it on sale off of Steam, I think it was in like 2016, and it's had my heart ever since. So the story of BioShock Infinite takes place in the year 1912, and you play as a man named Booker DeWitt. He starts off as like this alcoholic gambling addict. He's gotten himself into some trouble, so he's approached with a deal. Bring us the girl and wipe away the debt. What that really means is you're gonna go up to a floating city in the sky named Columbia, retrieve this girl named Elizabeth for whatever reason, bring her to the client, and the debts are paid. That is the basic premise setup, and from there the game proceeds to blow your fucking mind. Seriously, and I know this is kind of subjective in terms of like nostalgic games, but I'm pretty sure this is the very first FPS that really hooked me like it did. Because everything about it is just, it's so gripping. Only thing, yeah, like the game is over 10 years old at this point, so the graphics are a little dated by now. So if you can't handle that, I do understand, because there are some games that I can't play because they're so dated, even though I've heard such praises about them. Like Uncharted 1, I tried playing it, I was like, these graphics are so dated, I can't do it. But if you're cool with dated graphics, you will not regret playing this. I promise. Like, take Booker DeWitt, right? At first, his character is kind of generic. You know, he's like the Wolverine-ish type. He's kind of standoffish and thuggish. He's like, yeah, I'm just here to do a job. As the game progresses, you learn more about him and why he is that way. You do certainly sympathize with him. And of course, his world is turned completely upside down once he meets Elizabeth. Now, Elizabeth, to put it plainly, is one of my all-time favorite characters in video games. Because again, you see her at first and you're like, all right, she's cute, but you know, nothing too deep. She's been locked up in this tower on Monument Island her whole life, and now that you've gotten her, she's out and she's free, and she's gonna be fun, free-spirited. Again though, as the game progresses, you learn that there's a lot more to her character than just that. I'm not gonna spoil it. But Elizabeth is rather special to the people of Columbia. So when authorities get wind that you're trying to essentially kidnap her, they're gonna try to stop you. They're being led by a man named Zachary Hale Comstock, who's essentially the president. He's more seen as a prophet, because the society of Columbia is more or less based on religion, but more like old-time religion, if you know what I'm saying. The year being 1912 and all. Yeah, not exactly the brightest of times. Needless to say, this Comstock guy, yeah, he's a dick. And so he sends the authorities after you, and this is where the gameplay comes in. This is, I mean, a lot of things about this game hook me, and the gameplay is certainly one of them. Because it's an FPS, so you got your guns. There are a lot of different kinds of guns you come across in this game, but for me, personally, this is what I do. I stick with the machine gun, because I just prefer my rapid fire. And you get it pretty early on in the game, so I was good with that. It works for me. It's always my main, my go-to weapon when I play this game. That being said, you can actually carry two guns at the same time, and you can alternate between the two. So my alternate choice is the crank gun, which is a special gun you get from these big motorized Patriots, these big machines that come after you with, they're pretty much Gatling guns. Once you beat one of those, you can take the gun, and it's awesome. Takes a second to start shooting, yeah, but once you go, it does a lot of damage. It's great. So those are my two main choices for guns. But guns are not your only weapon in this game. I mean, you do have a basic melee attack when you're up close to an enemy. You can just hit the melee button and you'll hit them. And cool thing is, if their health is low enough and you hold the melee button, you'll do like a Mortal Kombat-esque fatality move on them. You'll break their neck, or you'll stab them and throw them away. That's really cool. I love that you can do that in this game. I do it all the time. But you also have these abilities called vigors. Vigors are pretty much elemental elemental magic abilities that you get throughout the game, like a fire attack with Devil's Kiss, or an electric attack with Shock Jockey. Which one do I prefer? It's the crows. Yeah, murder of crows. You can send a fleet of crows upon the enemies, they stun them, and of course it's gratifying to see them just yell in pain, because I just find it funny. If you've watched my videos on the Tomb Raider games, you knew that already. You send these ravenous crows on the enemies and they're just like, ah! That'll stun them, and then you can just shoot them and kill them. Or you can go up to them and perform a fatality on them just to add insult to injury. Either way, it's just fun. And you get gears that are pretty much mods. I always like the one where if you do a melee attack on an enemy, there's a 70% chance that it'll shock them. So my basic gameplay looks like this. I'm going around shooting guys, sending crows on them, and zapping them with melee, and it's fun as all hell. It's really addicting. Like, this is a game, if I'm having a bad day, I'll go to a random point in the story where I can just kill a bunch of guys and blow off some steam. Works like a charm, which is funny because there's a DLC called Clash in the Clouds where it's just you're fighting guys and that's that. No story involved, but I just prefer to play the story. That's just how I am. Doesn't matter if it's out of context. I like it anyway. And there's a reason for that though, because the story in this game, oh my god. The story is the reason this is one of my favorite video games of all time. And I'm gonna try to be as vague as I possibly can because again, I feel like the less you know, the better going into it. But let me start off with the world. I mean, Colombia is beautiful to look at. Even with the semi-dated graphics, it still looks really cool. You're walking around looking at the people, the architecture, you're hearing the music. It's really immersive. It really puts you into the time period and the world of Colombia. Honestly, one of the most immersive video games I've ever played, if not the most, as far as fantasy-ish worlds go. But the story, the characters, the writing, it gets out of control, like you have no idea. Which is funny, because it sounds at first like a simple extraction plot. Bring us the girl, wipe away the debt. You're just doing a job for some money. It's almost like you're a bounty hunter, like the Mandalorian or something. But actually, kind of like the Mandalorian, once you actually meet what you're supposed to get, everything changes. And boy, does it ever. I'm telling you, by the end of the game, I'll never forget the first time I beat it, I wasn't okay in my head for like a week. I'm being completely serious. It's just all the emotions are there, but more than that, it's just its shock factor. There's a lot of things you learn about the world of Colombia and the characters, revelations in the plot that just blew my mind. It was the first time a video game's ever made me feel that way. I just remember being like, holy shit, I didn't know video games could do that. Changed me forever. And ever since that week, I've been looking for a game that made me feel the same way, and it was impossible to find until I was introduced to Persona 5 Royal. Because that game did it. But BioShock Infinite is always going to be the one that did it first. My first love, as it were, when it comes to mind-blowing video games. And don't even get me started on the soundtrack, holy shit. Actually, I wouldn't say this is one of my all-time favorite video game soundtracks, I'll be honest. It's still great though, I mean, the orchestra work is fantastic, the needle drops are just another layer of immersion into the time period, but I will say this is another thing that hooked me into the game and gripped me. Early on in the game, there's a choral cover of a Christian hymn called Will the Circle Be Unbroken. It's completely a cappella, and if you don't know this about me, I am a sucker for good harmonies. So it's a choir singing this song, and to this day, it's still the most beautiful song I've ever heard in a video game. Oh my god. Every time I hear it, like, I'll just put it on for shits and giggles. I'll be like, well, now I have to play BioShock Infinite again. I have no choice now. Like, I'll put it on and it'll be like, will the circle? I'll be like, no! Okay, fuck, now I have to play the game again. Yeah, I've done that to myself. And after you beat the main story, if you're down, you'll play the extra DLC chapters called Burial at Sea. Now, Burial at Sea is actually the bridge that ties this game to the original BioShock. And for that reason, if you remember, I've never made it through the original BioShock game, so I've also never really made it through Burial at Sea until just today. I just beat it for the first time like a couple hours ago. And well, like this game's main campaign, it's pretty mind-blowing. I'm not gonna say a damn thing about it, so again, you'll just have to trust me. I mean, I don't like it as much as the main campaign, of course, but it's still fun, although there is one scene towards the very end of it where I was like, I can't watch this. I actually had to turn away and shield my eyes and mute my TV. It was bad. But other than that one scene, which went on for a little longer than I thought it was gonna, it's a solid DLC chapter and necessary if you're a BioShock fan. Alright, so I'm gonna end this review here. BioShock Infinite is, like I've said, one of my favorite video games of all time, one of the greatest ever made if you ask me. It just pulls you in with its immersion and does not let you go until you beat it. The characters, the writing, the world, the gameplay, and of course the mind-blowing story. It left me in shock. That's why it's called BioShock, because I was in shock for a week after I beat it for the first time. I wouldn't doubt that. Ken Levine, who is the creative director of this game, he is currently heading up a new game called Judas, which based just on the fact that he's heading it up, I'm looking forward to it and I'm excited as hell for it, because he made BioShock Infinite. I trust him. Alright, so BioShock Infinite, have you played it? What are your thoughts on it? Whatever you think, go ahead and leave a comment. And of course, thank you for subscribing. Peace!